What's up, YouTube? If you're about one of those people who's just like really convinced about how important they are and they like really need to convince you about how important they are. So I was at a wedding with Ashley a couple weeks ago and I was talking to this dude afterwards at the reception and he was like going on and on and on to convince me about how important his job was. Which is fine, it's like whatever. But then it got kind of weird because he was like, so what do you do for a living? I was like, I'm a motivational speaker. He's like, oh yeah, I heard that. I'm like, well, why did you ask me? Like, if you already knew, why didn't you just say, I heard you were a motivational speaker? Like, don't ask if you already know the answer, you know? So I'm like, well, you heard correctly. And he's like, yeah, I do that too. I'm thinking this is very interesting because it seems like you just went on for like an hour about how you do something else for a living that's very important. Like, how do you do motivational speaking too? And he's like, yeah, I do that too. I just don't get paid for it. I'm thinking, hold up, rewind. Didn't you just ask me what you do for a living? Meaning like, what do you get paid to do? Like, how do you feed yourself? And I said motivational speaking and you said I do that too. I just don't get paid for it. Meaning by definition, you don't do it for a living? It's like if he was like, hey, what do you do for a living? And I was like, I am a professional stripper. And he was like, oh yeah, I do that too. I just don't get paid for it. I just like, I take off my clothes before I go to bed every night or before I get in the shower. And obviously people have many different definitions of what a motivational speaker is. And of course you don't have to get paid for it. You don't have to do it for a living to be a motivational speaker. So I'm wondering like, what kind of speeches does this guy give? So I was like, so yeah, like what are these speeches you give? And he says, and I'm not making this up, he's like, well, I don't actually give speeches. I have a sign on my TV about Anne Frank. As you might recall, she's a Jewish victim of the Holocaust. You might remember her from The Fault in Our Stars or her diary, which is like world famous. And he's like, so, you know, whenever my buddies are over and we're like watching a game and it's not going well and they start complaining, I point at that sign about Anne Frank and I'm like, guys, it could be worse. Now, I think it's great to keep life in perspective and to not complain about problems maybe that aren't important. I just was in that moment like really confused about how he and I have the same job. So like, so this is the same thing? I get hired to share an inspirational story at like conventions and schools, and you have a Holocaust sign on your plasma TV? Which, it sounds like maybe he has good intentions there, but that also might just make everyone feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.